Lios Enchim Anyavu. Greetings, everyone. May the Creator bless you all. And welcome to my podcast, the Good Do E Medicine Podcast. I'll be your host, Pete Rodriguez.
All my native people stand up. All my native people stand up.
We're going to go ahead and get started. Thank you, everyone, for coming in today. Food deserts in Native communities. We have RedDawn. Honored to have her here today, Senator, and AC. And this session is being recorded. It is being recorded. So right now, the hand raising is off. So we're just going to talk a little bit, maybe introduce ourselves first, and a couple of things. Mainly what we want, I want to hear what RedDawn wants, I guess, to get out of this talk or this room. And I guess that's a good start. We can do that. Let me pull up my notes. And a little bit of what I'm doing and where I'm from and what I want to see out of this discussion. For me personally, my name is Pete, Lios Enchemanyavu, Quechelea. My name's Pete Rodriguez. I come from I'm here in Tucson, Arizona. I'm with the Pascua Yaqui tribe. I work there. Actually, I live between two reservations. I'm very lucky. I live 1 mile east is the Tohono O'odham Reservation, and 1 mile west is the Yaqui Reservation. So I'm right in the middle. And food deserts, it's really important to me because I've been working with the Yaqui tribe and the senior center and the elder garden, and I've started their garden 20 years ago. And my main focus is, well, it feeds the elder center. There's about 40 to 50 elders, and we feed them with fresh produce and vegetables there every year for the past 20 years or so. And I really focus on growing traditional foods, not only from our tribe, the Yoeme, the Yaqui tribe, but also other tribes as well. So this year, for instance, I'm growing Yoeme purple beans. I'm growing white tarahumara sunflowers. I'm going to be planting different squashes and also medicinal herbs. And we also have a 40-acre ranch, but that one's barely starting. But it's a little part I'm doing. And oftentimes we have a lot of fresh produce left over, and we give it to the rest of the community members. So we're doing our little part here. We have a small reservation, and we're doing our small little part here. And I think there's a gardening, I guess, movement, so to speak, in Indian country. I had a podcast yesterday. We had a chef on there, and he shared some of the similar passions and thoughts I have. But for me, I really want to see community gardens in more Indian communities, reservations, traditional foods come back, even backyard gardens, aquaponics, aeroponics, and things like that. That's what I want to see and contribute, and hopefully bring more of that to, reservations and native communities, and even co-op farms. So that's what I would like to see. And I just want to network and maybe contact with other people that are like-minded like me, and, native communities, Indian country. So that's what I want to hopefully connect with today in this talk. But thank you. I'm Pete, and I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Pete. Thank you for organizing this room. I know that it felt like this kind of really grew organically out of a conversation that we had last week. So for everybody that doesn't know me, my name is RedDawn Foster. I am state senator from South Dakota. I'm Oglala Lakota, born for Kia'ani. So I'm Navajo and Oglala. I live on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, which is the size of Connecticut, but we really only have one grocery store. And although it's improved over the years with offering fresh fruits and more produce, fruits and vegetables, it's really just aisles and aisles of processed food. And just when I moved back home, it really was this huge discrepancy of what was available. And just even my diet alone, I had moved back and I had started teaching and doing a business program at one of the high schools. And so even their school lunches of attempting to offer maybe a healthier choice wasn't really a healthier choice. It was just like, again, it's processed food. And even though they had a salad bar, most of the kids would drown their salads with ranch dressing. And so just seeing that huge change from when I went to school there and the diets that they, the foods that they had access to, I remember as a student at that school, we couldn't wait to have lunch because we had grandmas and they're cooking for us, and it was all like home cooked food from scratch, and it was so yummy that was it was a treat. And then coming back and seeing just that transition to where you not only had, like, the food wasn't real food made with love, but you had this processed food that it it lacked the love, the taste, the nutrients, everything else that was we took maybe for granted at that time. And then just seeing the transition across the reservation of at the time when I lived here as a youth, we only had that same grocery store, but a lot of people had their own gardens and hunted. And so our diets weren't completely dependent on the grocery stores and what was available there. So I've seen a lot of shift within the past. I moved back in 2012. And so I've seen a big shift that there's community development corporations that have really started putting a push on community gardens, their food systems, of doing research to expand what can we do to become food sovereign and really address this food apartheid that's happening, because about 98% of our healthcare, 98% of our healthcare are food-related lifestyle diseases that we're affected by, like heart disease. There's an epidemic of adults in the age like 40 to 50 years old getting their gallbladder removed. And it's kind of like no one's aware of it, but all of a sudden people are talking like, oh yeah, I got mine removed. Oh, I got mine removed. And then you find out, like, within a small group of friends, 80% of them have had their gallbladders removed. And again, that's diet-based illnesses because of just the food we have access to. So I thought it would be really great to kind of expand of the discussion that we had last week, and having a lot of people come and say what they were doing in their communities, on their reservations, of how they were expanding, not just community gardens, but also food co-ops, and how we can move back to a traditional diet and deal with maybe just even the nutrients of the food that we're getting now, and looking at maybe using some of this information to inform legislation that will be coming forward. One of the things that South Dakota has discussed repeatedly, which I would also like to address during this conversation, the pros and cons of changing the way EBT or food stamps are structured and what they pay for, and looking at a lot of, when we looked at some numbers, there was a high amount of EBTs that were going towards like junk food, sugary sodas, energy drinks, and then processed foods, in which all of those end up creating so essentially we're subsidizing junk food companies that are creating diet-based illnesses in our people, and then more down the line we're paying for it through our healthcare system, because these are leading to just diabetes, just hypertension, everything that you can think of that comes along with a poor diet. And so I'm really grateful to be here, especially with Pete and AC, and just find out everything I can. So thank you. Oh, this is RedDawn, and I'm done speaking.
Hello, everybody. This is AC Agoyo. I'm calling in from Washington, D.C., which is on the homelands of the Piscataway people. Originally, I'm from New Mexico. I'm a Pueblo person. I grew up at Okewinge, which is in northern New Mexico. That's my father's tribe. I'm also from Cochiti Pueblo and Kiwa, which are my mother's tribes. And I would want to send a special shout out to my mom who's in the room, Rachel. She's listening along. She lives back home at Okewinge. So I'm glad that she's able to connect on Clubhouse and listen to these types of conversations. And I really want to pay tribute to my mom because growing up at Okewinge, she made sure we ate healthy all the time. You know, she didn't allow us to have, quote, junk food. You know, we could have soda, but maybe only during our feast days, our Pueblo feast days. And, you know, her influence and her guidance and that helped really make myself and my siblings into healthy people, you know. And I think this idea and this topic is timely because there are ways in which we've kind of diverged from that. Growing up, not only did we farm, you know, my family farmed, my mother, you know, made sure we ate healthy, but we also had commodities. You know, commodities aren't always considered the best food, but for some people that might be their only option. You know, the nearest grocery store, they might not be able to get there, or if they do go there, maybe they don't like how they're treated there. So, you know, the options for going out and getting food on your own might be limited. So I think there are multiple ways that we can discuss food sovereignty in any country. You know, it has to start from home, and there are multiple ways that we can improve programs that serve us. You know, right now, you have the food distribution program on Indian reservations. I think it's improved. You know, we're able to have bison in food now. We're able to have traditional foods, whereas before that wasn't the case. So I'm really here to, you know, listen and learn. I'm by no means am I a food sovereignty expert, but I'm happy that Pete and Senator Foster were able to create this conversation so that we can hear from other people in Indian country and other people, you know, who live in urban areas to find out the ways where, you know, we can improve these situations. And again, this is AC Agoyo, and I'm done talking.
Thank you, AC. And Waylon, we have Waylon here on the stage. Welcome, Waylon. Waylon, I was thinking of your group, Waylians, but I'm sorry. That was a good group room, but also, this is being recorded, Waylon, just FYI, this session. So, and we'll open up the hand raising as soon as we're done with introductions. And Waylon, please, if you could share a little bit about yourself and...
Good morning, everybody. Thank you. My name is Waylon Pertenzeagle. I'm an enrolled member of the 3 affiliated tribes of North Dakota. Currently working on a couple of different projects regarding hemp, basically, but it does tie into some of the food sovereignty movements and initiatives, and so it's very relevant to the conversation, and I'm very, very honored to be joining the stage with you all. I definitely am looking forward to more people joining the conversation who are working in their communities for this specific purpose. So most definitely, thank you.
Thank you, Waylon. And really quick, I just want to reset the room. This is Food Deserts and Native Communities. We're talking about solutions, mainly solutions to bring, and also chat a little bit about what's going on in your tribe, in your community, what you're doing to fight the access to fresh food and vegetables, and also how to combat the high rate of diabetes, as RedDawn, Ms. Foster was saying, obesity, lack of access to food. Here in the Tohono Reservation, just south of me, there's only one store within almost 50 miles or more, and that's it. There is no other store, and it takes almost an hour drive or more round trip just to come into town. And once you get into town, all there is fast foods, McDonald's, Wendy's, Kentucky Fried Chicken. That's all there is. There's no, access to fresh fruits and vegetables. But yeah, so I'm gonna go ahead and open up the room, the stage. Just be advised that this session is being recorded, and with that said, you are when you do come on stage, you are accepting that it is being recorded and you will be recorded. I do want to hear from a couple people. Nicole, I'm going to invite you to the stage to invite to speak. We spoke about something really interesting. I would like RedDawn to listen to some of the things you had to say earlier. We spoke in this week about some farmers markets, mobile markets, and things like that. So it's hand raising is open. So if you want to come up to the stage, please, and share some of your stories or comment or things you would like to share with us, you are welcome. Okay, thank you for coming on the stage. And don't forget to mute your mic when you do come on stage. And we'll just go in order. So first, Nicole, if you could just do a quick, brief intro, your name and where you're from, and what would you like to share? I'm really interested in a couple of things you have to share with us.
Bonjour, relatives. Nakomas Nakwaki Kwen Indijanakas, Maskajibi Nindunjaba, Makwando Dame. My name is Nicole, Anishinaabe from Bad River, which is on the south shore of Lake Superior. It's a place called Mushkazibing. It's a place where food grows on water. I'm very wild rice is a important part of my community's culture, my community's economy. So that's where I come from. Right now I reside in Madison, which is the ancestral land of the Ho-Chunk Nation. And I just wanted to chime in a little bit about the conversation that we just had the other day, which was about native food markets. You could hold on just 1 second.
Sure. Well, go ahead and also we have a couple more people up on the stage. And just be advised, again, this session is being recorded. So if you come on stage, you are consenting to be recorded. Thank you. Are you back with us, Nicole?
No, I'm actually going to pass the mic for a second.
Okay.
If I could, and then I'll come back here.
No worries. We'll come back to you. Megan, please, if you could just do a quick intro and let us know a little bit about you and where you're from.
Hi, I'm Megan Baldy. I'm from the Hoopa Valley Tribe in Hoopa, California. I am the district coordinator for the Klamath Trinity Resource Conservation District. I also sit on the Intertribal Agriculture Council Executive Board of the Pacific Region Representative, and as well as the Western Region Tribal Advisory Committee for NRCS. I work in my community primarily doing food sovereignty initiatives. We have about 144,000 acres in our reservation and about 3,200 people living in Hoopa. We do only have one store. At one point, our store was shut down. We just got it back 2 years ago, but it was shut down for about 3 years due to a huge rat infestation. The store was not managed by the tribe, but it was managed by a corporation. And they basically had a huge rat infestation, and we don't know for how long or for what period of time that they were feeding us food that was contaminated, but it was pretty bad. And a lot of the reason why they got away with it was because of the fact that they were on a federal Indian reservation and they paid their inspection fee to the county, and the county did not have jurisdiction, so they were able to continue to do it. And we don't know for how many years, but we were a food desert at one time. Right now we have one store, one mini mart. We lack a lot of infrastructure, especially with small businesses. So trying to get people into ag has been a little difficult and trying at times, but it's definitely so worth it. When I first started working with the program, I was actually tossed into the community garden by the previous garden manager. And at that time, honestly, I didn't know how to grow anything. My husband was the farmer at home. and I would just go in the garden and take a salt shaker was about it. And so, I got thrown into that position, and it was really hard at first to get it going and understand how to even get a community garden up and running. The great thing was the previous lady that ran the community garden, she got a lot of the infrastructure set, like the fencing, the road, we had like stools and benches in there, and so she got a lot of that in place. And so when I came in, it was just basically how to get the garden going and what the vision of the garden was going to be. At first, I talked to a few farmers, and I was like, what can I get going? Because I didn't want to kill a whole garden in the beginning. And one of my farmer friends, he told me to grow pumpkins. They're so resilient. So I was like, okay, I can grow pumpkins with kindergartners. That's not a problem. So I got the kids involved. We grew pumpkins from seed, and we had this pretty nice garden. At the time, next to the garden was a behavioral school. And so we live on a reservation, and our school district's 90% Native American. So these kids were over in this behavioral school for many reasons, some of them acting out, some of them not able to, function within, basically segregated, which was really sad, but they actually would come over to the garden when they would get frustrated and just kind of blow off some steam. Well, the pumpkin patch was doing so well, so when they came over, when I wasn't there, they actually destroyed all the pumpkins. And I was like, oh man, and I knew it was them, so I went over to them and kind of just like said, how could they do that to the baby's pumpkins? And they all hung their heads. They were all pretty shamed out. And I know all of the kids and their families and stuff, so it's one great thing about being part of this community. Well, I went back to the garden, and I was just like, what do I do? I could lock the gate, but that's not going to keep them out. They'll scale the fence. I could call the cops, but they're used to that. They're there. They've dealt with that before. Or I could get them involved. So I got the kids involved in the garden. They actually built garden boxes, and we started growing food there. And I taught them how to eat food that they grew from there. So it was a really good project. And what was really beneficial about it is the kids had a place to go that call their own when they were having issues in the classroom, and they also were able to eat the food that they were growing from their own hands. So that's a little bit about the community garden background. And since then, we do so many youth things. This pandemic has put a damper on that, which is unfortunate. But also through our program, not only do we want to teach people that these foods are nutritious, but how to use them. So, we do cooking classes with the season, and I like to bring in indigenous foods with that. So like one of the favorite dishes to make is like a kale and salmon stir fry, and just kind of getting kids used to like having different foods introduced with their regular foods or familiar foods is one good thing, and they really loved it. We do the cooking classes all throughout the community with the senior center, at the school, at the diabetes center. And then I'm also a master food preserver, and so I teach people how to can, ferment, freeze, and dry foods. So there's a lot of things that the community really enjoys that, and I teach kids, from 8 all the way up to our seniors. And our program has been really successful in writing grants that actually also are able to purchase a lot of the canners, jars, and canning equipment. And so we not only believe in teaching, but we then believe that empowerment comes with tools. So we like to teach people how to do the canning and then give them the tools to do that. And it's not just, adults and community members. It's our elders and our children that we're also working alongside. So am I going way too long?
Hi, Megan. We have other people on the stage, but yes, if you could sum it up in the next 20, 30 seconds, that way they're allowed to speak. Okay.
Yeah. So, I do a lot of just outreach to our community, and I feel like that's the most successful thing. And if you're really passionate and you can see the change that you want to see in your community, I think that just strapping on your boots and getting on the ground is the best thing to do. Thank you. This is Megan. I'm done talking.
Thank you so much, Megan. That's a lot of information, very valuable. I'm pretty sure RedDawn or anyone here listening could connect with you. I definitely love what you're doing, and I'm definitely going to follow you and connect with you. Do you have any questions, RedDawn or AC, of any of our speakers so far? We'll get back to Nicole right now in a little bit.
Yeah, Megan, no, thank you for that story. And I started following you the last time I heard you speak. I would love to have a much longer conversation and find out maybe what funding sources that you guys have been able to tap into as well. But I'll connect with you offline.
Okay, sounds good.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Megan, for sharing. So after the store had that big issue, did people just decide that this is a tribal sovereignty issue and we need to take control? Is that it? Without that happening, obviously it's a bad incident. But without that happening, do you think that the tribe would have moved in the direction anyway?
I think that the tribe at that time realized that we were the ones that had to shut it down, and then that we were the ones in control of that. It was an eye-opener for sure, but now I believe that the tribe is, very attentive towards that fact. And, even now they are working very hard to, keep rats out by clearing a lot of brush around the store and where it's at. So, yeah, the tribe actually definitely took control of that. But if it wasn't for the tribe, the county would have allowed them to continue to operate if the tribe said it was okay.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Megan. Nicole, are you back with us, Nicole?
Yeah, I'm here. So just quickly, I wanted to just talk a little bit about, Pete, I mentioned the other day about the Native Food Network, and that's a market connection for Native food products. And what's an initiative going on here in Wisconsin? Friend of mine here in the community he coordinates that. And one of the things that he incorporates into this organization is trade routes, where he has mapped a route to distribute and buy and trade native foods. And so I encourage people to look that up, because I think I think it sets a good example for ways in which that we can work together as communities to do that. So I just wanted to add that piece to this morning's discussion. And this is Nicole, and I'm done speaking.
Perfect. Thank you, Nicole. Next, we have Teresa. And also, just a quick reminder, we are talking about food deserts and Native communities, and this session is being recorded. So if you do come on stage to speak, it's a consent that you are and will be recorded. Thank you. And Teresa, we have Teresa next, please. If you could just talk a little bit about your name, where you're from, and a little bit what you're doing in your community to fight these the food deserts. And just keep it under 3 minutes or so, if you don't mind. Thank you.
OCO, good morning. I'm I'm an enrolled member of the Cherokee Nation. I currently reside in what is known as the Seminole lands, and as today is known as Florida. As you know, I'm been trying to learn and listen about everything, and you all have been very, very good teachers. I'm not currently residing, as I said, in my nation, but I go home and visit often. And when I do, I often go eat with my relatives at our, I guess for lack of a better word, our cafeteria. And Pete, I hear a number of you talk about your gardens. We don't really have that. And when we go to eat at my cafeteria, we're given processed foods. We get in line, and what we are given is basically what I would call government subsidies, and it's all comes from cans and stuff. And I'm not really sure. I don't know if there's a question. There is a question in here. I'm not really quite sure how to go about it. And I guess my question is, how do you go about going to the tribe and saying, why are we doing this? How do we get a garden for our tribe? I mean, it's Oklahoma. We're Cherokees. We're farmers. Why aren't we farming? Why aren't we providing our people who are dying of diabetes and cancer? Why aren't we doing the things that we need to be doing? Sorry.
Yeah. No, Teresa, it's okay. I think it's definitely I wanted to just step in here for a minute because I know it's an emotional conversation when it comes to food, and it can range from happiness to this. And in my experience, my tribe, when I started my community garden back in, holy smokes, the middle 2000s, the early aughts, I guess you can say, my tribe, old council, did not help. I had to go to a tribal corporation, actually, that had the thought of creating a nonprofit that was going to be able to start addressing this issue. Unfortunately, I was a little bit ahead of my time, and it was in the early aughts that this happened, and unfortunately, it fell short. My efforts fell short. So Megan, the pumpkin patch, I understand. I understand what it is to face that adversity, and so, I don't want to speak for other tribal governments, but I just want to speak to my experience of what I've faced, and so that's, I think that's one of the things that we want to also move into is discussing that, our experience with living in the food desert, and so I didn't mean to interrupt you, Teresa. I just know the emotional.
No, thank you. And that's why I listen to you all and listen to your stories and try to maybe learn something to how you were able to introduce those things. Because we do run up against a lot in our current political climate at the moment with our current, well, I'll just say that and leave it at that. And I'm done speaking. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Teresa. Yeah, it's really powerful. And does any of our moderators want to follow up with Teresa?
Yeah, for sure, Teresa. Megan again. The program that I work for is a tribal nonprofit, but we are totally autonomous from the tribal government. And that autonomy allows us to go after funding that, the council doesn't really have, too much to weigh into, but also because they're so changing all the time, we're actually on the ground for a lot more years than they are seated. And so I think that was a great step. And we actually did it in the beginning through our diabetes center. So maybe having a conversation if you guys have a diabetes center or your healthcare center to see if they might be able to help.
Well, I mean, I don't know if you know, that's where our hospital's it's a monolith. It's W.W. Hastings, so it's a corporation unto itself. So that's just a huge monolith. It's a big corporation unto itself. So trying to go there is even worse than trying to go to the tribe.
Well, Teresa, this is AC. I know that the Cherokee Nation has introduced bison Is that run by, do you know which department that's run by? Do you think maybe they might be open to this discussion?
Maybe that might be a better place to start. Because going to the hospital, no. But going, yeah.
Teresa, this is Waylon speaking. I actually, Native Health Matters is run by a fellow by the name of Timothy Hausberg from the Cherokee Nation. And they're doing some pretty interesting things with hemp. And I'm wondering if they're the same people who are feeding the hemp using that for the buffalo. So Timothy Hausberg, but we can connect offline. So
okay, that sounds great. Thanks, Waylon. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Teresa. And I'm very happy we started recording this. There's a lot of good information and contacts, and please connect. And also, like I said, I'm recording this. So if you're on stage, you are doing our consent to being recorded. And next, Mr. Damon, please introduce yourself and where you're from and a little bit about what you're doing or your nation, food deserts, and Native communities.
Calling in from the southern tip of Southeast Alaska, Hiktahundli, and I've traveled around Indian country for roughly 10 years doing camps and facilitating workshops and speaking. And when I'd go into communities, I was always going in from like a informational, like I didn't go in and say, hey, I'm the master of this, or I have the knowledge. I would go in and I would just listen. I'd ask about the language. I'd ask about this food sovereignty, and I try and learn as much as possible. So Megan, I've been down to your territory. I'm really good friends with Kioki and Jude Marshall, and I came to your garden, your community garden, and I literally tell everyone about it. It's such an exciting space to be able to see your community have an opportunity and have access to produce and vegetables and be able to do it in a sustainable way. So I'm always looking to your nation down there and the work that you're doing. So for that, because I'm seeing how it's kind of trickling down to your youth and you're being very intentional. And I think that's what I'm curious about with other nations is how they're being intentional about getting this across to our young people, that the reason that we do have diabetes, the reason that we do have these poor health issues is because of colonialism and all of these sugar and processed foods that were introduced to us. And we're still, putting these things into our body. And I'll give you a quick story is here in Hiktahundli, Heidelberg, we're a village of 300 people. The nearest grocery store is an hour. We have a little grocery store in our community that's the size of a small gas station. So we don't have fresh things here consistently. And right now we're in the process. We just got a bunch of funding of launching a new grocery store that will have a greenhouse in it. And at the school, we have a ton of funding too. So we're working on a greenhouse there as well. And I got to the school about a month ago. I'm back home in my town. I'm contracting with the school because they have a ton of funding in different boxes, but they don't have the manpower in a sense. They don't have the push to really get things launched. And I guess that's forward thinking. We have a great principal and superintendent. Our principal is Native Hawaiian. Our superintendent is Shimshian. They're both indigenous. So they have a good perspective. And our Native Hawaiian superintendent, he's done great work in other districts as far as taking back sovereignty in an educational standpoint. And when I got into school a month ago, they were having candy in the bowls and giving out candy to students. So I really quickly checked that and said we need to be giving out fruit and vegetables and healthy snacks for the kids when they're coming to school, because this all correlates with their mental health. The things that we're allowing our children to put in their bodies, it all correlates with their mental health. And I was one of those kids who was, overweight, and I drank multiple pops a day because I was trying to cope with the trauma. And I learned that eating was one of my coping mechanisms. So I think if we're able to put language to our young people and say, hey, like this is a direct correlation with our trauma, and then being able to give them language behind their trauma, which is what I'm doing right now, you're able to kind of pull them along, because you say, hey, just eat good, eat better. They don't understand they don't understand what it does to their bodies. They don't understand what it does to their brain. So that's what I'm trying to do, is take it from the whole entire well-being of our young people, talking about trauma, talking about mental health and wellness, and then being able to direct them to good food. So that's where it started. And now I'm creating a project in the school now where I'm going to start connecting with seafood processing plants. And my vision is for us to have nothing but our traditional food, because we're not as desert the same, as the Navajo Res and some of these nations out there who are very far and you have to drive. We're in a different situation where I could go out to the front of my community and I could jig for halibut. I could go for shrimp. I could get crab. I just had shrimp and crab last night. I have halibut sitting in my freezer right now. I have deer sitting in my freezer. I have salmon sitting in my freezer. I have all these things that we are very accessible to, but we've gone away from them because of colonialism. So that's what I'm pushing right now, is I am trying to, with our school and the support, is we're trying to hide our whole entire educational system, from the books we read to the things that we put in our body. Our library is filled with indigenous books. Like, we have a whole section right now with nothing but women of color for Women's History Month, and our kids are learning about women who have done amazing things in history. So that's the direction we're going in. And it's, I guess you could say it's easier because we're so isolated, and we're able to have our kids immersed in their community and culture. Like, we have a totem park, we have language in the school, we have an immersion school. So I guess everything that we're doing is all correlating with the mental health push forward. And I think it starts with what we're putting in our body. And that's what I'm trying to do here. And for why I'm here is, like, I want to share, but I want to, like, listen to what other people are doing, because I think it's really important that we have networks and we're all communicating, because there's amazing things going on out there. And I feel like we don't do enough communicating to find out what's working for others, so that we could try and, implement those things into our community. So I'm always trying to listen and learn. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Damon. No, exactly. I think this is what the beauty that Clubhouse brings, is the ability to create a community and share that information. And I love what you're doing. And so thank you.
Yes, thank you, Damon, for that. Very, very. I've been meaning to speak with you. Maybe we can connect also. I've heard you in other rooms, and I love what you're doing with the communities. But we'll move on. We'll have Brooke next to speak, and also people that joined the stage, and also on the audience below. This session is being recorded. It is being recorded. So if you do come on stage to speak, you do give consent that you will be recorded. Thank you.
Oh, hi. Hello. My name is Brooke Rodriguez. I'm a Taino mom living in Matinacock Territory, Palmanock, New York, also known as Long Island. And so my experiences with food deserts through my community kind of goes from the rural to the urban, because we were back in the island when we were colonized by Spain. We were first, I was going back like 500 something years, but so the first time we came into contact with like food deserts is through monocropping, because they would take our tobacco and our crops and basically destroy biodiversity by creating monocropping. So that was like the first implementation of a start of food deserts. But then when we got colonized by the United States, they changed our agricultural economy into a parts manufacturing economy. So basically the food desert increased because we no longer relied on an agricultural economy. And then, of course, you always get the reduction of species and stuff like that, food systems. Some cattle industries came in, and that changed the landscape. And then the United States also practiced like open eugenics on Boricua people. So there was a campaign to depopulate the islands, and about 2/3 of our population were sterilized. And part of that also, that depopulation, was land grabs. So they created relocation programs, but it wasn't called that. It was called something else. And a lot of us wind up going to cities for job skills and stuff like that. And when we found ourselves in cities, particularly a big population in New York, we came into urban food deserts, which urban food deserts are very different. It's not based on like monocropping or the reduction of diversity, but access to whole foods. So what you have in urban centers and cities is essentially industrial food systems, basically your processed foods, high preservatives, high salt, high sugar. And Boricua people, one of our number one killers is diabetes. So it's all related to these purposely placed food deserts and things like that. And one of the ways that Boricua people, when they came to the urban centers, especially the ones who were from farming communities, like my grandfather, when he came here in 1943, I believe, he actually came from like a peanut farm. Peanut is actually a traditional food of the islands, along with cashews and pineapple and such like that. So a lot of Boricua people started creating what they called during the urban decay in basically the 70s and 80s and 90s, community gardens. And it was actually an act of resistance, because what was happening was that the city wasn't taking care of Boricua communities or brown communities. And there was, I kid you not, literally dilapidated, like half falling down buildings. And so Boricua people reclaimed these spaces in places like Loisaida and took back these empty lots and started building community gardens. And what's interesting about the community gardens in New York is that it didn't get any support until white people started doing it. So now you have like a whole bunch of white people now over the last, like, I'd say 5 or 10 years, creating community gardens. And they basically get all of the visibility. Because as we know, any place that Indians go, there's always going to be erasure and things like that. So they're never going to admit that the roots of community gardens is directly related to migrant cultures in Boricua community, and also, believe it or not, Korean, because Koreans came here also and created a huge urban gardening. But some of the ways that we kind of like take on that thing is a group of us, me and my friend Desiree Kane, we created a program called First Foods Program, which essentially was supposed to be a native in-person meetup and kind of like a meet and greet and kind of cooking and recipe share. But because of COVID, we had to take it online, and we noticed that it just like kind of exploded. I didn't really think that it would get it as big as it is, but so we're right now in our second year, and what we do is we hire basically traditionalists, aunties, uncles. We're very like anti-capitalist, so I don't care if you have a degree. It's nice if you have one, but it's also nice if you don't. And we just hire people from, all over the Americas, indigenous Americas, and we give free weekly classes every Wednesday, but we're probably going to be switching that to Thursdays again. And the other thing that we started doing was having the food podcasts, which a lot of the earlier podcasts were about land back and access to land. And access to land is I think, the primary way that food deserts are created for indigenous community, the restriction, either whether it's relocating indigenous communities to territories they don't know, or forcing monocropping into their territories, or for the rural or res natives, it's putting them on land and restricting mobility. So through my son's nation, because he's Shichango Lakota, I noticed that they're restricted to the reservation territories, and then the buffalo patterns that the migrations that used to happen no longer are happening. And that's directly impacted the range of Team Silok and how far Team Silok can go, because the hooves used to basically till the soil. So all of these things create food deserts for indigenous people. And Teresa, I don't think it's the fault of indigenous people. I think these structures are purposely put to harm us and to restrict our movement and to destroy us. But we are powerful and we're resilient, and we will always overcome these things. So just wanted to let you know that, you're going to be able to do things. And if whatever you need my support, I'll definitely help you in that. But thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you. You do a lot of good in the communities, and that's what we want to hear about today. And a quick reset, we're talking about food deserts in our native communities and what are some solutions. We have Senator RedDawn Foster, AC Agoyo, and my buddy Waylon here as moderators, listening to couple of people speak. And also this session is being recorded. So if you come on stage to speak, it is open to come up and speak if you want, but just be aware that it is being recorded, and you do consent for it to be recorded when you do come out on stage. And we'll be moving people to the audience. Don't feel like, we're moving you, but we want to give some other people a chance to speak. And we're going on 50 minutes, so we'll see how it goes. We'll keep it going for maybe, excuse me, another 30 minutes or so. But we do want to give everyone a chance to speak about what's going on in their communities. And Sarah, please welcome to the stage and the mic. And you have the mic. Thank you.
Ayuki Yotoa for inviting me up here. And I can only talk for just 1 second. But I reside on Coast Miwok land, and it is a very abundant land as far as in all senses of the word. There's a lot of access to food here, and a lot of access to traditionally gathered foods. So some of the work that I've been doing through the California Indian Museum and Cultural Center has been to sort of help people counteract that food apartheid situation in their communities by relearning how to gather traditional foods and how to process and prepare them and preserve them. So it can, it's all tied in with food security and sovereignty in that way. And I've been doing meal kits with traditional foods, and we send them out to the communities, and then I do Zoom cooking classes with these meal kits to show people even just how to make new foods with our traditional foods, and kind of get them excited about gathering again to help sort of just counteract that lack of access to good and whole foods, like Brooke was saying. And that's what I've been working on primarily over the last year, and it's been really successful, I feel, and I get a lot of feedback from people who have returned to gathering and are really excited about making new foods in this way, and it sort of takes out that equation if they have access to these to gathering spaces. And one of the struggles is not having free and easy access to these spaces, and many of the gatherers up in like Pomo country will get cited for gathering, and that's been one of the challenges as well. But thank you for the space, and my name is Sarah, and I'm done speaking.
That's all. I always enjoy seeing your Instagram posts and all that really good food. So, Alex, how's it going?
Tihane Washte. I'm Alex Romero Frederick, and I'm actually sitting with my husband here, Wayne Frederick, and we live on the Sichango Mokoche.
Having apple nachos.
Apple nachos, he says, for breakfast or brunch or whatever. But yeah, for us here in South Dakota, it's not so much a food desert, but a food apartheid, because we can leave the res and have access to good food. So we decided, I'm thinking about 6-7 years ago, we're ranchers here, and we were seeing how our cattle were being, when we would sell them at market, they would be taken out and put into large feedlots, and nothing was coming back to the community. So for the past 7 years, we've been keeping and raising these cattle ourselves, and we call ourselves res raised. And our cattle, they're 100% grass fed. We don't do antibiotics. We don't do steroids or anything. It's all natural. So my husband here, Wayne, he's the buffalo man on the Rosebud, and we would use his knowledge on how to take care of buffalo and translate that into cattle until we can get buffalo. We're working on that. Hopefully next summer we will have buffalo out here. So our little land back for us is taking these tribal lands that weren't previously held by tribal members and taking that back under our management and rehabbing them. So we've rehabbed grasslands. We're working more in farmlands. This year is the first year that Rosebud is going to have hemp producing. So my husband has applied to be a hemp producer. So we have farmlands that we have taken out of commercial farming, and we're going to turn those into hemp croplands. So, and also like community gardens, I think it was Brooke who was saying how community garden spaces were taken over by the white people, and that's kind of what happened here on Rosebud. They took that away from the community, and we don't really have an access now to that. So we work with other people within our community who are like master gardeners, and we're working on a collective there to provide food from the people for the people. And we use their farmers market. There's a farmers market that they have in town in the summertime, and we really try to push what we call res raised. It's from here, it's good, and hopefully that will grow more in the future. And we're just always looking to see how we can better impact our community through food. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Alex. And I would love if you could share that apple nachos recipe sometime. That sounds really good.
Yes, I would love that recipe too. We're going to do this is the club Gathering of Nations. So if you haven't joined, please join. And probably on Res Cafe, I started a new room on Thursdays around, I think it's 4 p.m. or so. We discuss traditional foods, native foods, recipes, things like that. So we can share maybe that recipe sometime. That would be so good. Thank you, Alex. And next on the stage, we have Josh. Josh, welcome, Josh.
Pilamailo, how me talk to Chante Washington up there, choose up here. Josh Diloba, Machapalona. My name is Josh Diloba, and I'm from the Cheyenne River Indian Reservation in South Dakota. And seemed like Wayne Frederick misunderstood and thought it was food dessert, so he's giving out apple nacho recipes. But I just want to say, so, and I can only speak from my perspective, and that's my reservation. And we talk about food deserts, and it's real, right? But a lot of it is us as Indian people making bad choices. And because, like Joe Dirt said, it's not what you like, it's the consumer, right? So our grocery stores on the reservation, they're not carrying a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables because that's not what people are by and large buying. When the EBT hits, people are buying hot Cheetos and soda and all that kind of stuff, and I mean, there's all kind of reasons for that, I think Brooke alluded to some of that in the way that we've been conditioned for our food choices. And I remember when I worked on Rosebud, there was an organization that was plowing, or they were tilling for gardens. They had a program where they were tilling for gardens, and they were practically begging for people to let them come in and till so that they could do the job that they were applying for grants for. And so that opportunity is there a lot. If you want to grow a garden, it's there. But also there's a lot of wild foods that grow, all over our reservations that people just don't get out and take advantage of. And so a lot of it's a mentality shift. And so how do we get people to think differently about the way that they approach food? And I feel like and I don't know the answer to that. Obviously, I don't make the best food choices myself. So what could you guys tell me to make better food choices? But I think that's the main question, is how do we get people to approach food in a different way that's healthy for them? And it's not necessarily that we don't know what's good for us and what's bad for us. We're not ignorant. We know that if we eat a lot of carbohydrates, we're going to get diabetes. And then we get diabetes, and then we just continue to drink soda and eat these high carb foods, even though people are telling us that's bad for you. So I think maybe hopelessness is a part of it. You know what I mean? Like, we don't really see the point in worrying about our own health, because we don't really see what our road forward into the future is, like a good road, So I just wanted to say that, and appreciate everybody and the knowledge and expertise that we bring into this, and especially Pete for opening up these spaces. And just wanted to say thank you. Heche tuelo. This is Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Those are really, really good points. To expand on that, we do grow a lot of fruits and vegetables, and I think it was last year we grew some asparagus, which takes a long time. We grew some the other type of, I think it was a type of cauliflower, and it is sometimes difficult for our community, try this food, and they, getting them to try different types of vegetables. But I'm just speaking for our tribe and our situation. We had difficult, try this. And then we had like, no, I don't want to try something new. Well, like, it's good for you. It's healthy. But yes, thank you for that, Josh. And does anyone, any of the moderators want to maybe respond to Josh, and we'll move on?
Yeah, no, thank you, Josh. And I think that is the great thing about having these conversations, is starting that and being able to really learn from each other. Damon Bell was speaking earlier about the work that he's doing with our community and our youth, just kind of addressing those very things of what their relationship to food is and why it's important, and how it's connected to a much bigger issue of, I guess, just our sovereignty, our language, and it's a comprehensive movement that they seem to be bringing forth. And I know that, as you said, repetitive exposure normalizes it. What's available will become normalized in the food systems that we're exposed to, the foods that we're getting in the schools. It creates that pattern, and then we do take the path of least resistance. So whatever is available, whatever is easiest. I know that when I was in grad school, I tried to look for what was nutritious, but I ended up, or I should say even now that you actually know me, I go for what's easiest. And so that's kind of that thing of, in certain areas, the healthy, nutritious is also easily available. So then that makes it easy. But when it isn't, you really have to depend on that self-discipline. And one thing that I would love to kind of just bring aware, we as, I guess, humans actually develop our food taste while we're our food preferences while we're in the womb. So our food, what we are going to tend to gravitate towards, begins before even like our first breath comes. And so as women that are carrying a child, be aware that what you're consuming, your baby's consuming, and that's going to develop their food preferences going forward. So, it comes with education and outreach. And food is political. Like, if you think about it, we as Lakotas were never beat militarily. It was once they destroyed our food source, our full economy, our buffalo, that's when they were able to subjugate us. There was a war of attrition. So identifying it in that bigger context of food is political. When I was little, I remember I went grocery shopping with my dad, and he is, my dad and my mother met at Wounded Knee 73, so that kind of gives you context of just their political awareness that they had. And so we went to the grocery store, and of course I wanted white white rainbow bread because it had kind of that cartoon looking image on there. And so I grabbed it, and my dad's like, no, like, we don't eat white bread. That's processed. There's no nutritious food. And he like completely like went through this very political, I mean, I was probably 5 years old, and went through this political source of how our food is political, that through our diets, they're able to control us, and that we, no processed foods, no white bread, all these things that were actually intended to destroy us as a people is how he put it. And so that kind of shaped my preference of, okay, what I'm putting into my body, it has to be nutritious, is love, and that food is no longer about nutrition, it's about profit, and how can we combat that? So I think, again, what Damon, Val, and others are doing of reaching to our youth and bringing that awareness and how that our food systems, our traditional food systems, are connected to a much bigger thing about sovereignty. So, wonderful question, Josh.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Senator RedDawn. We're going to move on to Robert. Welcome to the stage, Robert. Also, really quick, food deserts and native communities. This session is being recorded, so if you do come on stage to speak, it's a consent that you will be recorded. Thank you. Go ahead, Robert.
Hey, Waylon. Thanks for introducing me. I think I'll start out with talking about my intermittent connection to various indigenous or American Indian communities, ranging from where I'm enrolled at in Lake Traverse, Saskatchewan, Wakpetawan, Oyate in South Dakota, and growing up in Montana and Fort Belknap Indian Reservation, living in a Flathead Indian Reservation, now living in Olympia, Washington, and my daughter's from Quinault Indian Reservation. So when I lived in Denver, we had a gardening project called Honor Mother Earth out at the White Buffalo campgrounds. And in this gardening project, we were gifted some corn seed from a Hidatsa or Mandan medicine bundle. And this seed was about 100 years old. And when we went out there and planted the seed out there at the campgrounds, we did ceremony, and we had song sung, and we gave honor to where that seed came from. So I think that's important, traditional connections to the place of food and also the seed and where it comes from. And then my sister, when I was in Pine Ridge one time, Troylyn Yellowwood, rest in peace, she made some wasna. And I was traveling from Pine Ridge to Seattle, and I stopped by Montana, and I attended a film festival in Missoula, Montana. It's an Indian film festival, and then I still had some little baggies, little sandwich baggies full of wasna that Troylyn had made, and I borrowed some popcorn bags, and in between the movies, I would put wasna in my popcorn bag. So I jokingly said that, oh, we don't have any Lakota popcorn. There really is Lakota popcorn because the Lower Brule tribe has this popcorn that they sell in these little teepees, in these little containers. They look like little teepees. So they have Lakota popcorn for all of you that might want to show a movie and buy Lakota popcorn. Also over here in the Northwest where I live, they have not only commercial fishing, but traditional fishing and harvesting. And a lot of them have that feeling because of the Bolt decision where the Indians fought for their fishing rights. And it is political. It is political. But it's political both having to do with sovereignty and being connected traditionally to the land. So one time we were going up the hill. Well, not a hill. It's a big mountain, Mount Rainier. And we brought some Muckleshoot kids up there. And we're going to pick huckleberries. And this kid said, pull over on the side of the road. And we pull over side the road, and he said, I need to brush myself off or cleanse myself off. So he went down to the creek and he wiped his face off and splashed himself with water because he was taught that before you go up to that sacred place, that you got to wipe yourself off. And he had respect. And I think that was knowledge gained by me, being this Dakota, moving always and learning from different people. That was something I didn't even know this kid knew about. Then after we finished picking huckleberries, and we could see the mountain over here in their territory, and when we looked across, we could see so far as to see the mountain on another reservation, Mount Adams over near Yakima. We could see far. And it's really cool that you could see our connectedness with the other Indian tribes, and just imagine they're picking huckleberries over there also. So also this thing about being transitional between the city and the reservation, I just went to go have some coffee over on the Quinault Indian Reservation one time and mentioned just casually about wanting some meat. And I told my son-in-law, you should bring me hunting sometime. And he said, when do you want to go? I said, I don't care. You want to go right now? So my granddaughters went into town to have coffee with my auntie. And then I had to call them up and say, I'm going hunting. And then we got an elk. And then I brought the elk from there back to help out in the city. So we can, how would you say, cross-germinate or pollinate amongst tribes. And as we travel, we learn about our connectedness, and we help each other out. I think that there's a lot I want to say, and I don't want to speak too long, but I've learned from some of these tribes over here in the Northwest. Muckleshoots and Nisqually and Puyallup tribes, they have traditional leave not only for their workers in the tribe, but the students as they go to school. So if they're fishing for the salmon, they get leave from school to go get on the boats with their mothers and fathers and uncles and grandparents to go fish. And I remember helping them pull a fish out of the boats and weigh them. There was little kids in there. And what a better way to learn and be part of the system in the school than to actually be part of the harvest. And so there's a lot more I'd like to share about this interconnectedness. One last story, my cousin Tuffy, in some of the the food that's in abundance over here, Washington State's known for apples and salmon. And so when he travels from Seattle area all the way back to the Lake Traverse Sioux tribe, our Oyate, our Dakota Oyate, he brings salmon and apples with him to pass out. So I think of all of us as we travel into each other's area, we can share our strengths. So there really wouldn't be a food desert if we would all share amongst each other and share this. So my tribe, Lake Traverse Sioux, we have a cafeteria in our tribal administration office. I don't know how many other administration offices have cafeteria in them, but I would hope, and I'm not saying they are, but that would be a great place to start role modeling eating from traditional foods, whether it be in that administration building in which we have a cafeteria, or whether it be in schools. I think that could be done. And I think we had to go along the calendar of the harvest and the moon and the sun, the equinox, etc., instead of going along the tell time according to the seasons, so to speak. And with that said, I'm Robert. I'm done speaking.
Thank you, Robert. That's a lot of good information, and you provide a lot of value. I love your stories. I want to hear more of your stories, but we need to move on to our next speaker. And really quick, this session is being recorded. So if you're on stage, you do consent to being recorded here in the club, Gathering of Nations. We're talking about food deserts in our native communities. So Larissa, you have a mic. You have the mic, and welcome.
Yeah, Pete. Hi, everybody. Thank you for this really interesting room and for sharing all of your stories and your voices on this really important subject. My name is Larissa Nez. I am a first-year master's student at Brown University. I study public humanities. And so my research basically explores the intersections of Indigenous knowledge systems and the way they're reflected in modern and contemporary art, but also in museum practices, Indigenous studies, in public health, and in critical theory. And so basically what I study is thinking about methodologies to incorporate Indigenous research that utilizes cultural resiliency and cultural heritage as an intervention for social inequalities and structural inequities in the U.S. And specifically in Indigenous communities. So I really like the theme of this room, and I really like the focus on, I think, traditional knowledge systems, as well as thinking about how Indigenous communities specifically are responding to food desert as a crisis. But I also really wanted to bring back that food deserts are the result of colonialism, but also that they are structured in a way to produce health inequities, and to continue to do so, they rely on capitalist systems as well as racist frameworks and industrialized food systems that reproduce all of these health inequities, as well as harmful systems that continue to have negative health effects. But I think that if we think about, health deserts as part of this larger structure and this larger system that continues to oppress Black and Indigenous people of color throughout the world, I think we'll have a better understanding of how to respond to it. Because I think if we place, health inequities within, if we place the responsibility completely on the individual, I think it not only shames a lot of individuals who may not have the choice to, get as many healthy foods as they want, but it also, reproduces violence in our community, and it reproduces fat phobia. It reproduces all of these taboos and these ideas that aren't necessarily grounded within Indigenous worldviews or frameworks. And I also wanted to just think about how, a lot of these underlying structures are really, are not necessarily, in our faces all the time, but we will witness it in, the continued expansion of food deserts, which are, just geographic spaces where there are no grocery stores within several miles, but also in urban Native communities, there's the junk food islands where there's just high concentrations of fast food chains and convenience stores in one space. And I think when we think about food deserts, there's a habit of thinking about food deserts only existing in rural communities. But, food deserts and junk food islands are part of this system that reproduces health disparities among Black and Indigenous and other people of color. So I don't know. I just wanted to highlight, I think I've been hearing a lot about, individual decisions, causing our own health issues. But I think, if we want to actually be responsive in a way that is productive and effective, we have to think about the larger systems in place that are reproducing health disparities, but also the geographic locations where food deserts exist and junk food islands exist as well. So I just wanted to thank everybody for their time and for their words. Yeah.
Thank you,
Larissa. Thank you so much for that, Larissa. Thank you for contributing. And I just wanted to introduce the next person because she's my mom. So, Rachel, if you're ready to talk, we'd love to hear from you. She lives at Okewinge. That's where I grew up. So, I'm glad you're here, Mom.
Mr. AC, my name is Rachel Agoyo. I'm from the pueblos of Cochiti and Tiwa. And I wanted to thank my son for bringing up a very strong point of his memories of his early childhood, and that I made a choice and they heard me, that we were, although I wasn't continuously voicing it, but I think it was my decision, and that decision that I made to serve healthy food and came from my tribe, from both the Tiwa and the Cochiti Pueblos where I grew up farming. Every family in the Pueblo had a farm, and we relied on that for our basic food sources. So having been traditionally brought up that way, it's ingrained in my life to continue. I'm involved with a group here in the Espanola Valley, the Tewa Women United, and I would like to talk about my involvement there. I've been involved with them since the early 1970s, and they grew out of need for support for women. So it's a women's organization, and now they're in Espanola. So recently, because of the different development of different programs within the Tewa Women United, we have an environmental program under which our garden exists. We have a garden. We're called the Healing Garden Oasis, and we're fortunate to have the city of Espanola welcome our plan under the leadership of Beata Sosi Peña from South Santa Clara Pueblo. She approached them, and they agreed to let us have a little plot of land behind the city buildings in the city of Espanola. For several years now, we've had a healing garden, where we grow herbs and the native plants that are used for healing and then for food sources. So we recently, with the sort of a joint alignment with the Guatemalans, the Guatemalan people came up, and we were able to revive our tradition of growing amaranth. So we now have amaranth in our garden as well, and now I'm approaching my 80s, and I'm with a group called Saya and the Tiwa land group of grandmothers. So our role as the Sayain is to link the issues in garden. We begin our planting, and we, as the Sayain, we are begins as we open up the session with prayer and blessing. Although in fact we invite them and take care of the gardens, okay? And then we're in prayer. Way to come and visit us. It's open. It's on a slope behind the Espanola municipal building, and we're just extremely proud of that we have the joint cooperation and working together of the Sayain with all the other age groups coming down to our young people. We have a large number of young people who come to join us in our work garden. So anyway, I wanted to thank you all for your interesting topic and
yeah, thank you, Mom. I think we had a little bit trouble hearing you. Sometimes the connection back home on the Pueblo isn't the greatest. So that's another thing that maybe in a future topic we can talk about internet and broadband in Indian country. Pete, you want to introduce Brooke again?
Yes, Brooke. Thank you, Larissa and Rachel. Brooke, you wanted to add a little something? I know Senator RedDawn, she had to, has another room and she'll be back and forth. But yes, Brooke, if you'd like to share.
Oh yeah, sorry about that. I forgot to mention that, like, if anybody is interested, First Foods is contracting teachers throughout the year. So we're going to be starting programming next month. The topic for next month is going to be food sovereignty. So if there's anybody interested in teaching a session, it's about an hour and a half, but 30 minutes is like Q&A to talk with other Indigenous community members if they have any questions or stuff like that. So just wanted to put that out there. And then also I kind of wanted to backtrack to what RedDawn, Josh, and the last person before your mom, AC, spoke regarding basically food in terms of biophobia. So what biophobia is and how it's been created is basically a fear or an aversion away from nature, but that also correlates with natural foods. So just backtracking, and I just want to put it out there for people to kind of like grasp the topic, because I think it's important to look at larger systems and understanding that cultural food palettes can be dictated by the state and the government. So kind of focusing on the individual, it could be helpful, but it could also be harmful. So when our traditional lands are taken and stolen, they right after that created privatization of lands, stolen lands. Then from after that, they went to not only privatization of lands, but trespassing laws. And this directly related with, in the USA specifically, with indigenous communities that weren't allowed to leave the reservation. That's how that happened until later on, were killed. And also with African emancipation. So once emancipation happened, what was happening was that indigenous, African people were eating from the land. They were eating like the spruce and the things and gathering and hunting and essentially creating a food sovereignty for themselves. And so in order to stop that, states literally put trespassing laws that said that you can't trespass on quote unquote somebody's privatized land, which forced them back into relying on the system for the food distribution and consumption and access and stuff like that. And so now what we have as a direct response to that is biophobia, which is like the diversion of natural fear of the natural world. So we have like, especially in like urban centers, we have a lot of kids that will not eat an apple off a tree. It creeps them out. It's like something that's just out of this world. Or I've seen like one time when I was with my partner's side, I was trying really hard to get them to eat vegetables, and there was a phobia behind that. And then so we talked about what the vegetables were, what they come from, how fruits actually start off as flowers, and that fascinated them, just knowing that. And so basically what I wanted to put out there is this idea of biophobia that is directly a cause of stolen land, privatization of land, and trespassing laws. And I just wanted to put that out there, that this is systemic. This is something that is curated, and we have all the tools and all the resources, our people, to overcome this. So I just wanted to put that out there. But thank you for having me up again.
Thank you, Brooke. Thank you for sharing. And you brought the point about the apple. We grew some Brussels sprouts, and some of our tribal members never seen or tasted Brussels sprouts. We grew peanuts, and they don't know where peanuts come from. We showed them the plant. We dug up the peanuts. And broccoli. They're like, wow, I didn't know broccoli grew like that. Some of the kids and even adults, they have no idea where this food come from. And when they tasted it, they were amazed because, as you well know, when you grow your own food, it's organic. It tastes so much better, so much more nutritious for you. But, great point.
Can I say something about that real quick, AC? Oh, sorry, Pete.
Yes, go ahead. We'll be winding down the room, food deserts and native communities, in a little bit. We've been going on, almost 1 hour and 27 minutes, and this is being recorded. And the stage is open. Maybe we'll grab a couple more people that want to speak. Please raise your hand. And go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, well, I grew up pretty poor on the reservation, so we grew up eating commodities, And so we had canned vegetables, and particularly canned green beans. And then when I saw fresh green beans, they almost looked like radioactive. They were so green. And I was like, what? Why do they look like that? They don't look normal, because to me, normal was what came in a can from commodities. So that unfamiliarity with different kinds of food, and even to this day, I don't eat a lot of different kinds of food because, what you grow up on, what you're familiar. And then like Senator Foster was saying, I can blame it on my mom for what she ate when I was in the womb. So, Josh.
That wasn't quite where I was going with that, but no blame. I just want to thank everybody that's here. I have another panel, so I just wanted to break in. Brooke, what you just said was amazing. Thank you for bringing that forth. I've never thought of that term, heard of that term. So it's really great that you've brought that to just my consciousness. And Josh, Larissa, I heard, I was going back and forth, but I just want to thank everybody for coming and being a part of this conversation, because it's frustrating to see just how the effects of colonialization has impacted our food source and therefore our lives, because water is our first medicine and food is our second. And so understanding it in that relationship and seeing how far that we've been torn away from that is pretty frustrating. But then it's also so invigorating to see this revitalization of our just putting everyone going towards, this food sovereignty, and understanding that it is at the essence of who we are, of what we're putting into our body and the nutrients, and not just these community gardens and food co-ops, but also trying to return to a traditional diet and looking at where our traditional foods were and having it a part of a bigger context as food is political, food is love, food is sovereignty. And so just understanding it in that way, I think, is so amazing. And just starting these conversations to be able to address this and working collaboratively. So I look forward to this, and just this being the beginning of just working together collectively to address the food sources. And I do feel that if we can start tackling this, it could be a model for the larger world, because as I stated, food has moved from being a nutritional source to a profit source. So I think that we as Indigenous people really can, in our homelands, these are our homelands, and we have a different connection to the land and the food and the water to be able to lead that charge, and it will benefit everybody. So thank you so much, Pete. Thank you so much, AC, and everybody else that contributed to this conversation. And I know that there's so many other people in this so many other people on this in this room that didn't get a chance to speak, that have just amazing experiences and knowledge to share. But as I said, I hope this is just the beginning. So thank you again, and I will be exiting. So okay.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Senator Foster.
Yeah, thank you, Senator Foster, for joining us today. And thank you, Pete, for creating the Gathering of Nations Club and for creating this room. I think we heard that we can change what's happening in our communities, and that it has to come from the local people, and it should be grounded in each of our local traditions. And I think we also heard that there are challenges that even some of us face. We could work with our tribes, but we can also look for other solutions like nonprofits. We can also just look for grassroots people coming together and addressing some of these food deserts and food sovereignty issues. So again, thank you, Senator Foster, and thank you, Pete, for allowing me to be up here with you guys.
All my native people stand up.